In August of 1938, only a few short months after Russ Shapley founded the Buffalo division of the Railroad Enthusiasts, the club took an excursion to Arcade, New York on the Pennsylvania Railroad. Once at Arcade, the group would be taking a ride on the Arcade and Attica Railroad, then a busy short line railroad, and not the tourist attraction it is today. The trip began at Buffalo Central Terminal on the Pennsylvania Railroad. Here's footage of John Prophet, dressed in railroad engineer garb, taking a photograph or a 16mm movie of the head K4 engine that will pull the train. Arcade was a regular stop for the Pennsy, so this wasn't a special excursion train operated specifically for the railroad enthusiasts. Once all the regular passengers are on board, the train begins to back out of Central Terminal, passing Tower 49 as it does. You can see how complicated the trackage around Central Terminal was with this view. The old water tower is there as well. This is a view looking at the front of the train. Central Terminal is still looming in the distance, and Tower 49 can be seen to the left of the engine. As the train continues to back out, it's switched across the many tracks of the New York Central Main Line so it can be positioned at Tower 49A to pull forward onto the Pennsylvania Main Line. Although the film is a bit jumpy and out of focus, it's possible that this is Tower 49A in the shot. The train is now pulling forward on the Pennsy Main Line. We get one last look at Central Terminal as the train heads out. As I mentioned in episode 2 of Living with Steam, it was extremely difficult to hold an 8mm movie camera steady when on a moving train. The train has now arrived in East Aurora and is passing the elevated passenger platforms. In 1938, semaphores were still in use on a lot of the Buffalo Division trackage of the Pennsylvania Railroad. The train has arrived at Arcade, New York on the Pennsylvania Railroad. For the Arcade in Attica, the location was called Arcade Junction in their timetable. The old Arcade station looked more like a barn than a typical rural passenger station of the time. It's here that the railroad enthusiasts will board an Arcade and Attica train to continue their excursion. The A&A passenger trains were painted a typical olive drab and not the bright orange they are now. Here's John Prophet again, dressed in his engineer garb, making his way to his seat in the open gondola of the A&A train. John is carrying his 16mm camera. It was a typical thing for the railroad enthusiasts to be one of the guys by dressing in denim overalls and engineer's caps. The train is pulled away from Arcade Station and is on its way to Attica. Here, the train is passing Courier Station. The railroad enthusiasts of Buffalo took many excursions on the Arcade in Attica. The cost for a ticket on this particular trip was only $2. This is the station at Javits Center. Whoever shot this footage must have clamped his 8mm camera to the railing of the last car. It's relatively steady, and the pan movement to catch the old boxcar was somewhat mechanical rather than a bouncy movement to make you dizzy. At Attica, New York, the Arcade and Attica Railroad had connections with the Erie and New York Central. At Arcade Junction, the connection was with the Pennsylvania. The crew on the A&A from right to left is engineer Dan Robley and his brother Rube, who was the fireman on the engine. Conductor Howard Hopkins is on the left. When a trip was organized to the Arcade in Attica, the group usually took the A&A only one way. Sometimes they'd start their trip on the Pennsylvania and get off at Arcade, as the case in this footage. Once the A&A arrived at Attica, the group would either take an Erie train back to the Lehigh Valley Terminal in Buffalo, or a New York Central train to Central Terminal. If the excursion left Buffalo on the Erie, they'd arrive in Attica, take the A&A to Arcade, and then catch a Pennsy train back to Buffalo and Central Terminal. As Russ Shapley helps some of the lady passengers off the train, another excursion for the Buffalo Division of the Railroad Enthusiasts comes to an end. Until next time.